Hey, welcome to the podcast. This podcast is all about exploring two people's ideas, pulling things out of Michael's head and out of Tom's head. Now, Michael and Tom, we don't view the world very similarly at all, but we're good friends and we're able to sort of try and understand each other's world. If you're looking for a podcast that looks at what is grace and you want to learn something about grace, this is not the podcast. Go and look at one by Joel or with Theo or someone like that. But if this is a podcast that you want to watch where you're going to learn, how do you explore ideas and how can two rational guys end up with such different conclusions? This is a podcast well worth listening to. Enjoy. Welcome to the podcast. Today I'm with a good friend of mine. His name's Mr. Purple. Other people call him Tom, but he's a good friend of mine. And Tom, you're here because you have a different take on the world to what some of the guests have. What's your worldview?
So is that probably not the biggest question anybody could ask? How much time do we have? I'll see how long my battery life of my laptop is.
That's a good plan. I like it. What's your worldview, mate? I'd love to know.
Well, I think the worldview changes as you become wise, as you age and you have experiences. But for me, a lot of it changes and comes from having a curious mind. We can question business owners on their agenda. We can question people in interviews, why they're here speaking to us about this particular opportunity, why they only want to work for our company. I wonder if they're saying it to other companies too, you know? So that cynical mind changes your worldview. And I think, the word which it itching for me to say, am I allowed to?
You can do whatever you want. This is your territory.
Agnostic. Agnostic is the point, okay? And that point of being agnostic leaves you open-minded to suggestions, and the possibility that sometimes what we're being fed isn't entirely accurate, you know? And the biggest thing on this, and my missus is going to kill me for this one, will be religion, okay? Because I think that the things about religion that bothers me is a lot of it is still man-made. We know this because the rules change. If you look at Catholicism, the rules change from, whether it be contraception, what you can eat, which country you're out, how they celebrate it, and that. And those are human manipulations, you know? So it's down to, well, who made that change? Should I follow it? Do I agree with it? And it's just like rules for life, essentially. But and I don't really have any issue with people that are religious. If anything, I'm probably a touch jealous because they've got a firm standing belief, which I think is commendable. But the issue I have with it primarily is when it becomes God fearing. Okay, so if it's a bit like going into a toxic workforce, I'm working hard because I'm scared of my boss. That's not good. You'd have Fair Work Australia all over you. Okay, but when it comes to religion, it's okay. All right, you shouldn't have to fear any higher being if it generally is higher on every level and into the realms of the unknown, because that is really where it's at. Then it should be something that's welcomed, not to be fearful of, if that makes sense. But I think the Bible essentially is the one which I'm more familiar with than the others. I've read the Quran. I've read a few others. When people do take it literal, then I want to feel like I want to shake them a little bit. Come on, guys, come on, let's just be real here. If you're a bit more spiritually minded, okay, and we said that in this instance, Jesus existed, which we know he did. We know what he looks like. We know how long he's in power for, which is just over a year. So historically, we've got all this information. So we know he exists. We know he's a very smart man. We know he's very worldly, and he pulled together an anthology of a book with his buddies, which he called disciples. He knew what he's doing. There's a lot of components there, and the book is nothing new because there's about another 12 versions of the same book, thousands of years prior, which he also clearly knew about and put it all together in a nice, compact, a good way of living book, which I think makes sense. So I'm going to be on a good pile or bad pile. Yeah, brilliant, thumbs up. But to take it on it, word perfect, word accuracy, devote your wages to it, or what have you, I think is quite short-sighted. And As I said, I will put the caveat in there. That I've got absolutely no issue with people that are envy. I'm a little bit jealous. Okay, and these are the good things to come from religion. I'd like to have that firm belief. My curiosity is still out there to find out, and essentially, I believe I will only find out when I die.
That's very funny. Tell me more about, say, this. You say you almost feel jealous. Okay, so if we were to, like, you and I have known each other for a year or so, and I mean, we have a different worldview. Like, mine would be pretty much a straight Christian worldview. Yours is an exploring the world worldview, right? Why would someone who's exploring the world feel jealous about someone who's basically limited their options and bet on black? Like, what do you feel like is being missed out on by you at this point?
So the way you've explained it there, I'm not jealous of that perspective. So to limit your options, okay, yeah, I'm not too that's not something that appeals to me.
Okay, so what is it?
That's not it's I think it's that inner peace that people get from it. Okay. So you could believe the Barney, the Fenny Dinosaur is the Messiah or the chosen one, whatever. The rest of us can laugh at it and say you're wrong. But if that person firmly believes and it makes them happy, then I'm jealous of that self-convincing the story. Okay. Because I find every now and again when you question things and what have you, and there's no satisfactory answers, then it has an emotional context. It makes things a little bit lonely. It makes the uncertainty. Look how COVID affected people, and people didn't know when it's going to end, when they're going to have their civil liberties back, when they're going to be able to pay bills, whatever it may be. Okay, that uncertainty had a worldwide impact on mental health. Okay, so the same uncertainty applies the other way. If you don't know what happens when you die, you don't know which one of the hundreds of gods to go with, which one to put your money on. Then it's also, of course, it's going to have an emotional counterbalance to it.
I never knew this. You're teaching me something I never knew. This is amazing. All right. So you're saying that there's a downside to that, to being as open-minded as possible. You're saying that the downside is uncertainty. That must suck. I've never even heard anyone explain that.
That's just it. So I don't think people necessarily choose to be agnostic, or choose to say no, I'm against religion or whatever. It doesn't serve you. You want to have things that work well for you, the way you think and way you behave that works well for you, and we know if there's a firm belief in something, then that does work well for you. It does bode well for your inner peace, your self-confidence, what emotion surges, whatever.
If you've put your faith and confidence in something and then you go, hold on, the facts don't stack. This makes no sense. Then you'd be deliberately down a path that you knew was a lie, or that you were having to deceive yourself into believing was true. Like that's sort of what you're saying would be the worst possible outcome. Am I hearing that?
Well, that's just it, but that really is the case. So, we see it all the time, even like with Scientology, when Hubbard created that, he was a sociologist. When he wrote what he wrote, he was a bit of free thinker, but then this so-called man-made religion, even he turned around at the end and said, actually, you know what, half the stuff I've made up, it's wrong. Just stop following it. It already had so much momentum, firewalled itself up with its members. They're definitely fearing of something. Anything that's man-made, you and I can write and say anything. There's nothing stopping you and I creating a religion which we think is going to do a load of good for a lot of people today. And you never know, someone might pick it up in 2,000 years' time and take it as a gospel. Cool, that Michael Clark was a very smart man. He knew stuff. He was the Messiah. He wasn't a naughty boy.
I understand what you're saying. I really do. Okay, so I guess what I think I'm hearing you say is that you don't see enough evidence to be persuaded that any particular religion, let alone the Christian religion, is going to hold water in the long term. That's the bottom line of what you're saying. Is that right?
There's that, but it's also just that credibility piece that the stories within the Bible been predated, like quite a few times before in different cultures worldwide. Like the flood. So if we look far enough back, and with historians, with scholars, we look at this stuff, we know that the Noah's Ark story was well predated. We know we know about the Messiah. If we know that the components of the Bible are borrowed from elsewhere, and we can see this stuff, then it's that credibility as well. It's almost like plagiarism. You know, let's just say we come up with a really good business idea today, Michael, and tomorrow you go and post it on LinkedIn. Well, I know you got it from me. It's plagiarism. you know, it's that then you start to lose credibility for those that know. Those that don't, they take it on. That's a really good idea, Michael.
Okay, so what you're saying makes sense. Why is it then that rational people, or in other areas of their life, rational people, would wholeheartedly, like myself, for example, okay, like why would, like in your perspective, why would someone who seems rational at a lot of levels and good at his craft at a lot of levels of his work stuff or whatever, be seemingly completely irrational when it comes to this other part of his life? Like, what goes through your head there? Like, and be as blunt as you have to be.
So I reckon, Michael, if you were born in Mecca, okay, then you'd have that same, using your term, irrational sub-belief, okay, on top of your day-to-day life, because you can't choose where you're born, you can't choose the rules that you inherit, the social norms. Let's take religion out of it. There's ways we behave, there's things that we just accept. This is just the way it is. This is how we walk down the road. These are the laws we have to adhere to. This is what we the social norms that we have to put clothes on. It's normal.
I like
normal,
yeah. Okay.
It's just how we fit in. So, I'd hazard a guess that that your parents are religious, that you were christened when you were young. Went to some sort of school which this was the norm. As did I. Don't get me wrong, my mother's Christian, my grandmother's Catholic. They used to clash over that. And I remember looking at that as a kid saying, well, you've got the same God. you know, how come you both got completely different rules? It's because someone's intervened, and it's a form of social control.
I can see how you reach that conclusion. I can see that as you stared at that futility of your mum and your grandma, you'd be like, this is not attractive, and like, I get that. And I can also see why you would assume, say, that I grew up in a family of Christians, which, believe it or not, I didn't. But I didn't grow up in Mecca. Let's be real. Okay. I still grew up in Australia. Okay. What you're saying makes sense. So I guess from your perspective, when you think about eternity, like, what goes through your head? Is eternity something that you would welcome? Or is eternity a concept that's just completely made up and ridiculous? Like, where do you sit on like that idea?
So that's a far more spiritual question. Okay. So eternity is a concept which we struggle to get our head around. Infinity, specifically, because it essentially is incomprehensible. It's the number we can't imagine because it just keeps going. And a really good program on Netflix about that, which explains it really well. Don't know if you've seen it.
I'm not sure. Tell us about it.
But it's called the Infinity Complex or something like that, and they do a really good job of explaining it's in sort of infographics, in stories, and just different viewpoints. When you see it online, you see, let's put in context where the Earth is in the galaxy to the whatever, and it just blows our mind. It has that same feel, but beyond that still, because it's still going to keep going even on top of that. So infinity in itself is questionable because we can't get our head around it. It's beyond our scope. Okay, for me as well, I still kind of believe in a God. Okay, it's probably just not the one that people have used to control society. I think the capacity of our brains is far beyond what we realise, and I think a lot of our existence sits inside, and we're looking outside for it unnecessarily.
All right. So the first one is that I can see when you talk, you feel a bit hurt and disenchanted with organized religion and the way it's been misused. And anyone with half a brain can see that that's exactly what's happened all through history. Okay, that religion is often used to control people, control societies, push people towards things that are in someone else's favor. Look at the Crusades. You don't have to look too far. Okay, like that would be one of 1,000 examples you and I could come up with if we sat here for an hour. It's like, obviously your perception of what is religion and what's not, it's like, mate, you and I would actually view that the same way. Most religion is just poorly done badly, and man-made rubbish. Whereas as soon as you start talking about God and you're like, yeah, maybe God's within us, who knows, and stuff like that, it's like, well, it looks to me like you have a positive perception of God and a very poor perception, like a very low perception of religion, which I would share with you on both counts. Have I understood that, or have I misunderstood that?
I think you're right, and I think let's talk about some common ground here, or something which we can both relate to, maybe some of your listeners relate to. Look at the NDIS. Okay, you've got good operators, you've got bad operators. When a bad operator takes advantage of the most vulnerable in society, it gets my back up. I don't like it, as it should do. Okay, so I see the same thing. When you see a manipulation of the masses, it gets my back up. I don't like it, and it should do.
Okay.
You know, it's the same. It's the same thing.
Loud and clear. So if we were to like take man-made religion, stick it over on the shelf for the next like 5-10 minutes, forget it. Just look at, okay, if you were God, what would you be wanting Mr. Purple to know about him? If you were God, what interactions would you want to have with Mr. Purple, assuming that God exists and that he is for us, and getting rid of the man-made religion stuff, right? Just God and you. What do you think he'd really be saying to you?
Okay, that's a strong question. For me, there just needs to be that little dash of proof. There isn't any. There is an abundance of circumstance, and it's a bit like reading stats and coming to your own conclusions from it. There's an unconscious bias to want to believe, and this validation point. Okay, that must be that. What I would really like, I accept there's things that we don't understand. I would like something to happen to make us understand. There's someone come down, bang, guys, stop fighting. You've got it all wrong. Okay, you'll understand when you're dead, but just be nice to each other. Done. All right, nice one, mate.
So what I think you're saying is, at very first base, you'd be like, God, can you actually come and demonstrate that you're actually there so that we can have a relationship? Because until I know you're there, we can't have a relationship. That's sort of what you're saying would be baseline. Is that right?
That's it. And just that acknowledgement that, you're just not going to understand, so stop trying.
Okay.
So, it's good intentions to be nice to each other. But if you're having wars over it, then it's backfired. It hasn't worked. It's a bit like leaving.
Then we're back to that man-made religion. Like, because clearly that's the man-made stuff. Absolutely. And what you're saying is, like, okay, step one is that you wish he would just demonstrate to you that he's there. All right, let's assume that is sorted. Let's assume that he did that. Tick that box magically, right? Next thing, what else do you reckon he'd be saying to you? What would he want for you? Would he be on your side? Would he not be on your side? And we're putting away the people stuff, just you and God.
Okay, so that there would be a component of acceptance of being judged, okay, which is where the God-fearing component comes from. Let's just say that heaven and hell as a concept are real, okay? So basically, if I were to be judged on how I've lived my life, I would probably still go to a heaven on the basis that my intentions have been clean. I haven't gone out my way to hurt people or any groups of people. There's no nastiness, no vindictiveness, and what have you. So I think it's just a way of living your life. In your heart of hearts, if you've done something meaningfully bad for someone, okay, and then if you were to be judged for that, then perhaps you might go on the naughty path. And there are people out there like that.
So what you're describing then is, okay, step one is there a God? Am I going to know for certain he's there? And then step two is, the very next thing that goes through your head is judgment and evaluation of, all right, am I accepted or am I not accepted? Or is it like, or am I missing the mark there when I'm like, step two for you would be how he relates to you? Like, what is it like you're looking for?
If you think about it, we do still live. Everything is injured. There's no ifs or buts about that. I believe I put out a good energy, even if people disagree with my opinions and my thoughts, or even that I'm lacking hair. Okay, that's perfectly fine. I'm comfortable with all of that. My energy to put out is good. Okay, so generally speaking, energy that comes back to me is good. All right. Now, if I'm going out there and I'm being nasty, vindictive, I'm bullying, I'm being aggressive, I'm going out of my way to ruin someone's day, then it's going to come back in that sense as well. I'm going to get reprimanded. I'm going to be punished, um, and the energy that's going to come back to me is not what I'm going to want. So I feel it's going to be that principle, but on probably a higher realm.
Yeah, got it. Okay. And I guess what we're talking about there is that in your worldview, you believe that if there is a God and if he does evaluate our efforts and stuff, you're just fine based on your own performance. Like I get that. What else? And that is very different, say, from what the Bible would say, because the Bible would say, which I know I'm going from a book that you don't go from, but it would say that Michael's not evaluated on his own performance. Like whether I'm good or bad or whatever, whether I'm positive or negative, whether I'm vindictive or whether I'm not actually evaluated on my own performance, but I'm evaluated on what Jesus did for me. Because when he dies, he takes away all the negatives from my performance. So all that's left is the positives, whether there's 1 or 1,000, but all the negatives, whether there's 1 or 1,000 or a zillion, they're gone. So they're not brought into that equation. So, and that's like that's what I find very attractive about, say, Christianity, for example, is that I'm not going to be evaluated. Like, well, it's like walking into a test and you already know the answers, like, but you covered. But if we rewind, so for you, base one is God, is your job to show me that you're actually there. Job 2 is like, God, help me understand how this evaluation process goes. Okay. What would be something else that you'd want to have that you believe, if there is a God, that he'd want to have a chat with you about and want to help you out with or want to guide you on?
Probably want some explanation of what you've just said there, to be honest with you, because if that were the case, then there's no context for heaven or hell, because if you're accepting people with their bad turns, and you're dissolving them, then there is no heaven and hell. There is no judgment there. You can't have both. Okay.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Right, let's unpack this, because this is helpful for people.
Because they do say when you go up to the pearly gates, yeah, essentially that you end up with two paths. Sorry, your name's not on the list. A wide connotation from it. We know that you're going straight to hell. Is Hitler in heaven or hell?
Yeah,
really. Has he had his sins dissolved? But because according to that bit you just read back to us, if we take it that that religion as gospel, pun intended, then he really should be in hell, and probably exhibit A is in hell, because he really did horrendous things. You can't dissolve that. Okay, so this where it comes back to interpretations and what's right and what isn't. But I also do know a lot of people that go to the churches. There's a big one nearby here, the Hillsong, where I talk about quite often. I went once to keep someone happy, and I felt like I was being sold to. When you get tired of being sold to, and
you and I know what it feels like to be sold to. But if we rewind, you were saying that for you, you don't like the idea of judgment for most people, but then Hitler or Stalin or, I don't know, pick a name. For you, a judgment that is accurate is essential for you to believe that God is just. It's like you welcome that judgment for
not quite. So not quite. What the reason I say that was just to bounce back on your point. If that's the case, the way I read the Bible is I can do some wrong turns, I could do some bad things. It's still okay.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So that makes sense.
Yeah, so there's this contradiction in, well, which one is right? Is it heaven and hell, or is it all complete in one anyway? Because it's all dissolved. I just threw some big name examples.
It's good you did that. What you're doing there is you're like, hold on, Michael, are you saying this applies to everyone? But I would be saying no, because the Bible doesn't say that applies to everyone. So obviously, first I'm standing on the assumption that there is a God, and that I'm standing on the assumption that God sent Jesus, and then that the Bible is accurate. if we take those three assumptions, then the Bible would say that like the famous verse everyone always quotes, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. And then like within that is Jesus explains that you can choose to have me in your life or you can choose to not. And very clearly the whole way through the New Testament is you can have what Jesus accomplished for you apply to you, or you can have it not apply to you. Now, Hitler didn't want it to apply to him. He had his own ideas about life. But you've at this point gone, I don't really think that applies to me. I don't even believe it's real anyway. So, but it's like that. I'm not suggesting, Purple, that everyone in the world goes to heaven. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that everyone in the world, if the Bible is true, everyone in the world has the opportunity, if they want to repent, to say, yeah, I was wrong, I'm going to change. And to then choose to have what Jesus did for them apply to them. So, yeah.
So if that were the case then, okay, so if you've got someone who's lived as a Muslim all their life and they've decided to repent when it comes to their final minutes or hours or days or whatever, okay, would they still go to the same place?
Yeah, well,
if the truth was that there was just that one God, and it was and they're still living, breathing, and doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's where it's like the Bible does address this. It addresses it in the book of Romans. It says, "How can they believe in the one they haven't heard?" And then it also puts responsibility back on me. Like, and what are you going to do about that? But the Bible is it's pretty clear that someone who hasn't heard of Jesus is not going to hell for not hearing about Jesus. The Bible's like crystal clear actually on that in the book of Romans. But then you end up back in grey world. It's like, well, what about the person who lives in Sydney and wears a cool purple shirt and has heard, but hasn't actually seen enough evidence to validate what he's heard? That's where it becomes tricky.
Well, this is the thing. So we do believe in Jesus. There's probably one of the firmest parts of the stories. We know the gentleman existed. We know he was dark skinned. He had a big nose and a crooked back. They struggled to pin him on the cross for that reason.
Where did we hear that? This is news to me.
This is good history. I could probably show you some books where the historians have dug deep into this.
Because I know that we can find in the Roman stuff that he was crucified under Pontius Pilate. We know that there's like the Josephus explains that he was well regarded. We know that Josephus is clear that his enemies hated him. Okay, well that's not unusual, but it's like you're saying that for you it's easy to believe that the historical person of Jesus existed. Yeah, but that's not what I'm referring to. All I mean is, it's a choice to welcome. It's a lot easier to make that choice when you feel like there's some evidence behind it, and when there's not anti-evidence. But the choice would be, it's like, if you want to go to heaven, you can't turn up there with your sin all over you, because that will stop you being there for the same reason you don't want to hang out with Hitler in heaven. And so we have the choice of either saying, God, can you take this off me? Take these sins off me, which you're welcome to do, because that was the point of Jesus dying for you, to release you from that, or to be accountable for your own sins. And if we want to be accountable to God for our own positives and our own negatives, it doesn't matter if our positives outweigh our negatives 1,000 to 1. We're still buggered, because one would stop us from getting there. And that's where that would be like the doctrine of grace. But I'm not stupid. Like, I can see how hard that would be for you to take seriously, particularly given that we're declaring that a miracle happened there. Because if Jesus didn't die for us and take our sins away from us and then come back to life, then I'm actually believing something false that won't help me. Because I've also got to believe the miracle that Jesus lived a sinless life, because if he didn't, then he has to die for his own sins, not for mine.
So if you believe in something that's false and what have you, but it's made you happy, it's given you a good life and so forth, then you've won.
No, I haven't. It means I've dedicated my life to something false. That's not winning.
You still, no, because you've dedicated your life to living your life and your family and those around you Okay, there's the pragmatic parts to this. Okay, if you take on a decent doctrine, it makes you a better person. You want to give, and you live your best life on that basis. Then absolutely, you've won. You may, when it comes down to that aha moments when we pass on. Okay, now, damn it, Mr. Purple's right. I was
Like, what the hell?
I'm still happy because it worked for me. Yeah. Yeah, it's still given me everything I could have dreamed of and more. Okay, that's the bit I'm jealous of. That's what I'm
I can
jealous of.
understand why you would be jealous of that, even though to me, I'd be not jealous of that. But I can understand why you would be jealous of that. That makes sense. I guess what goes through your head, because this is valuable, when I'm like, because you're obviously seeing that I'm utterly convinced in my own brain. Oh, this stuff's like straightforward. Yeah, obviously Jesus took away my sin. Obviously, I have a healthy relationship with God, not because of anything I've done, but because of what Jesus achieved for me. And I don't know if that would be viewed by others as naive or silly or just freaking awesome. But whatever it is, it's like not being accountable for the things I've done wrong in the past is a joyful feeling. I have no words for how joyful that is. What goes through your head though when I'm like, well, that's how I see it, because that's how the Bible, which I take to be for real, sees it. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, there's so much good about agnosticism because there's an openness to, it's like, well, show me. That's what really agnosticism could be summed up as, well, you show me. Like, what goes through your head?
This is the thing. So you said something there which makes you feel really good. And there's a reason for me to be jealous of that. I also disagree, and it's just my way of being, and probably others as well. Almost certainly others are gonna. That's what I was saying. I'm unique in that sense, but I can only talk for myself. Okay, is I do hold myself accountable for my wrongs. Yeah, there's things I have taken wrong turns on obviously in the past that I'm not particularly proud of. Okay, I don't want to repeat them. I'd love to apologise more. Um, I sit on it, I own it, I feel it, I process it. Okay. And I think that level of ownership internally in that processing is more important than thinking that they would be taken off me and a third party.
I can see why you'd say that. I guess the question for me on that is there a positive outcome from you continuing to feel guilt for something that you can't change?
It doesn't continue. Okay. You process it. So it's a bit like, so there's a book out there called Whole Again, which I'd highly recommend for any married couple to read at the very least. It talks about interpersonal relationships, and where a lot of time we hold feelings in, and they get worse, and then they come out if someone has an outburst, all this sort of stuff. But part of what they talk about is to really sit in silence and really and feel that pain, feel that anger, feel that frustration, feel that hurt, whatever it is, actually experience it and go through it and actually let it process so your body isn't carrying it. Okay. And I think if I was really going to hit the nail on the head, that for me is heaven on earth. The fact we have the privilege to experience all emotions or the whole range of actually come out the other side of it and process that's heaven. Okay, so the other levels of consciousness that we can go to, others we probably can't. I don't think my purple marker is going to have that same experience. Okay, we can.
By the way, for the audio's sake, Tom, or we call him Purple, he's holding up a purple, a purple texter, because Tom has put forward earlier in the show that even a texter could have its own form of consciousness. Who knows? Sorry to interrupt you. Go, keep going.
Very right, but so I think as Madonna even talked about heaven as a place on earth. If we go with that context, then the whole human experience of not just the good things, not all the unicorns and sugar coated cherry pops or all the lovely stuff makes you skip down the street, to actually have a bad day, to be stressed, to experience worry, anxiety, to be angry, to have an outburst, to feel pain. All those are privileges too, because when you come out the other side of it, that joy is even sweeter.
Then, like,
You know,
I hear you.
so for me, that whole human experience is heaven on earth in itself. And I think to say, well, that's going to be dissolved elsewhere, that's going to be taken off of me, I don't need to own it anymore because I believe in someone that doesn't exist anymore, and whatever. I think you're robbing yourself of the human experience.
Yeah, I can see why you'd say that. I really can. It's not pretending that it doesn't matter that I've made mistakes or done silly things. It's not saying that. It's an acknowledgement that to the one person whose opinion matters most, which for me would actually be that person is God. In his opinion, it's sorted. It's covered. It's like when my son hangs out with me. My son did some quirky things last week, and I had to have a chat with him because life doesn't always go to plan. So that was last week, and now when I hang out with my son this week, I don't want him relating to me as dad who had to address some hard things that had occurred. I want him to relate to me as my dad who loves me, which was always true anyway, even while we were having to address some hard things. It's like, in the same way, I would not want, like, I would feel sad if I still had to continue feeling guilt or negative emotion or unprocessed, I guess is what you're saying, about when I relate to God, because when I relate to God, he's already dealt with that stuff. Whereas you're saying, but Michael, you're missing out on the ongoing experience there. But I'm like, well, to be honest, I'm happy without that experience. I'm happy to let go of stuff. Like, I have processed it. I know that I need to change. I do love knowing that I'm not being held accountable, if that's not being held against me. But I can see what you're saying. You're saying, well, Michael, you're missing out on something, you know.
You experienced it, and the thing is, when you offset it, you're still carrying it. It's still there at an absolute subconscious level. That's still there. You're not going to forget it because it hasn't been dealt with. Okay, Michael Clark still owns it somewhere. Yeah, it's going to come up. It's going to resurface. You move away, or perhaps could have done better there, or whatever. It hasn't really gone. Your body keeps count. Okay,
we
it doesn't
know that because it's like, potentially that's true that the body's still keeping count. Potentially it's true that I'm experiencing that it's been processed and I'm free of it. Like, how would we evaluate if it's been processed or not? Like, if it's stuff that no longer impacts you or whatever, because you know that you're free. Like Jesus said, he who the Son sets free is free indeed. So this is another spot that you'd have to go, well, either Jesus is not right or he is right. So if Jesus said that, and if it's recorded properly, and if it's accurate that he who the Son sets free is free indeed, then I actually have freedom to enjoy life. It doesn't change that I did silly things. It doesn't change that, whereas you're saying the body keeps count. I get that. But it's like, there is a level of freedom that I don't think I could experience without that forgiveness that comes from Jesus. But I am open to the possibility that I'm not understanding what you're saying.
Yeah, I think you're probably in a good space for your beliefs, and that's good for you. I do think that you're still open-minded enough to appreciate, understand that the human condition is there to be experienced, both pros and cons. I think you do probably do that still anyway. You could probably just do it more consciously if you chose to, but everything's working just fine as it is.
Well, nothing's
Okay,
ever fine's a word people use to say, I'll accept good enough when it's not good enough. But if we go back to what you're saying, I acknowledge that the hardest things in my life that I've dealt with have helped me in massive ways that easy times couldn't have. And significant mistakes I've made have helped me grow, helped me do whatever. But like, I can happy to acknowledge that, but we also end up almost like in humanism with that, which is the belief that humans have all the answers, or that they'll find the answers, you know, which I think is hard for me to take on board. But what I do find really fascinating about what you said is that, Michael, you don't miss out on the benefits of stuff-ups, and don't miss out on the benefits of pain. Is that what I think you were saying? Or is it, Michael, just...
So it's not even just the benefit. So the benefit is the one that sweetens it, saying, actually, yeah, I'll pass through this hurts, and time will heal, blah, 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 blah. There's almost a partly hedonistic component. Well, to actually experience the pain in its first place is a privilege in itself. Okay, so even if there wasn't that light at the time, and you're going to learn that the growth comes from actually experiencing the pain, not from sit, not from offsetting it. The bigger the lesson is, the bigger the pain. In many cases, there's a correlation there. But I think you don't necessarily need to think of the benefit. I think just reframing those bad components is important in itself.
I'm so privileged that you and I will sit down and have this conversation. Thank you so much. I know you got to go. I appreciate you took the time to have a chat with me. Thank you for being my friend.
That's it. Likewise, mate.
Happy to help. All right, see you, mate. Bye. Thanks so much. Oh, time flies. Tom had to jump off the call just then. Long story short, this is one of my favorite podcasts. So very valuable stuff, very helpful stuff. But it's like, this is not a deep analysis of grace. If you want a deep analysis of what grace is, as opposed to this episode, if you want a deep analysis of what grace is, then pick another episode, and I'd recommend you have a look at episodes with Theo or Joel. Hope it was fun. Hope you enjoyed it.